For your project, you will be working on this Dr. Lawrence interview, which was shot on a green screen. The lighting was not really that good. This is before we had really got all of our nice equipment that we have now. But one of the key things that you want to keep in mind when doing green screen work always is to make sure the lighting on the green screen is as flat as possible. No shadows, no contrast, just really flat, even lighting throughout. So we have more tools now to be able to do that. So when we do our class project, we should be able to achieve that. So once you get your footage off of the Viscom hard drive, you'll bring it into Premiere. Again, you want to keep things as organized as possible. That is your lifeline. And you'll just bring your footage in. Okay, so we have our interview here.
One thing that I would change would be the location.
Okay, so things a little laggy here, but that's fine. So you bring it into your timeline here, and the first thing that you'll want to do, because we're going to be keying out the background. Okay, with chroma key, that basically means that we're going to isolate a color to remove, so then we can replace it with either, another video, another image, some other asset, and then composite together as if it's one cohesive clip. So the first thing you're going to want to do is take the footage, if it's not already on V2, you'll want to just drag it up to the V2 track. Okay, I will explain why you do that here a little bit later. Okay, so again, once you bring it in, you want to make sure that it's on not the bottom track, but the track before. So once we do that, we'll go ahead and start getting into our effects. So we'll go over to the effects menu, and you can, go through video effects and go to keying and, go scroll down. It's a whole bunch of stuff in there. Or you can just type in Ultra. Oops, you gotta spell it right first. Ultra key is what we're going to use. Now, there's a lot of different key effects that you can use that does virtually the same thing, but Ultra key is the one that is a lot more forgiving when you don't have the best lighting. Okay, if you haven't lit things as well as you should have, as you can see, we have some hot spots here on our background. It's not evenly lit. So using the other ones, you can, maybe get away with some stuff. But this one is going to be the one that is the most, going to give you the most grace when you've kind of made some mistakes and oversights in production. So as you can see, you'll just drag that on there. I think I dragged it on there. And nothing happened. So that's a good thing, because that's usually not how it goes. So once you do that, you'll want to click on Effects Controls. So when you click on Effects Controls and your clip is highlighted or selected, you'll see, and I put 2 on there on accident, you'll see the Ultra key effect has been applied, but nothing happened. Why? Because number one, we don't have anything to, replace the color that we've keyed out, and the color that we keyed out is black. So we don't really have a whole lot of black. We do have some shadowy areas there, but because we didn't replace with anything anyway, nothing's going to happen. So what you're going to want to use is your eyedropper tool. You can also use your color palette too, but this is going to give you the most accurate color that you need to remove. So what I usually do is kind of look through it and just see where the most consistent shade of green is. So because it's not evenly lit and even when it's evenly lit, you'll probably still get, maybe a little bit of gradation where you have, several different shades of green. So you'll want to select the shade that you feel is the most consistent throughout. So about right here is pretty consistent, on at least on this side. So I'm going to select it, and it turns black. Which is what you want. But as you can see, because we had some hot spots, we had some issues here, some wrinkles, different things. You want to make sure, again, everything is, very taut and straight, no wrinkles, and you want to light evenly. So Premiere and this Ultra Key effect does have some parameters in here to help you fix things that have gone wrong. So you'll want to open up your matte generation, your matte cleanup. So we definitely got to clean up the matte. And sometimes I use spill suppression. It just really kind of depends on just how bad the lighting was. So one of the first things that you'll want to do with this one is play around with the pedestal. So as you can see, as I'm increasing it, that hot spot is getting smaller and smaller, which is exactly what we want. Okay, but we still see that it is still there. So I'm going to go to highlight, and I'm going to decrease that to 0. And as you can see now, we have a fairly decent key just from that. But one of the things that you definitely want to do every time that you do chroma keying, anything like this, you'll want to check your alpha channel. So your alpha channel basically shows you the reverse. So you're seeing not the subject, but more of just the matte. So you want to make sure you have pretty, clean edges here. You may need to kind of soften up the edges just a little bit, just almost like a feathering effect to it, just so it kind of gives the appearance of, the background being more cohesive to the foreground. It's like, they're one image. And when it looks too separated, it can kind of give that kind of hokey look of it being fake. So there. So, and then you can also tell where my problem areas will probably be when I bring in the background that I'm going to replace. So we'll play around with contrast a little bit. That does help quite a bit, but we're probably still going to have just a little bit of issue there on the sides. But we'll see. But that's not terribly bad. And it probably, depending on what background you use, you may not even be able to tell at all. Alright, so once we see that, we have a pretty decent key there. Okay, so we're going to go back to the composite view. And now we're going to bring in our actual background. So I'm going to go back. Not there. That's my project. And I'm going to find a background. So in the VizCom folder for the Dr. Lawrence interview, you have some backgrounds that you can use. Most of them are gradients. Gradients work really well for, interviews, talking heads. But if you want to use maybe a Lone Star logo or, something else that you think looks better, by all means, do what you feel. But these are there also for, you to use if you want to. So you'll, again, just bring it in, and you're going to bring that one into V1. So that's why we put the interview on V2, so that the background can be on V1 and it'll be behind him. Okay, so that's the whole purpose of making sure that it's on V2 instead of V1, okay, because we want this to be behind him. So if you're using an image, more than likely you'll need to stretch its duration. So, I brought the radial gradient on. It was pretty small in pretty much all aspects of the word, so I have to extend it, right? And when we look at it, You see, it's very small in comparison to him, so we are going to have to do some adjustments there. So if I click on the image that I'm using, the radial gradient, and I go to effects controls, we're going to use our scaling effect again. We're not going to animate it because we don't want it to be changing throughout time. We just want it to just be scaled up. Now, because this one is pretty small, even as I'm increasing it now, it doesn't increase enough, at least not to my standard. It's not big enough. So one of the things you may have to do is deactivate the uniform scale, where it's scaling both the X and Y axis at the same time, and you may have to do them independently. So as you can see, I need this to be wider, more so than taller. So now I can just manipulate the width of it. Okay, as you can see, that's not big enough either, so I'm going to just kind of walk it up more and more and more, and then I'll adjust also the height of it. Okay, so kind of like that. That's pretty good. And also, you may want to scale him down a little bit more, but I don't recommend that. But depending on your image and the resolution that it comes in, you may need to do a little bit of scaling. And as we kind of play through this, again, it's kind of like again.
What is it, the Hardy Turnpike? You see it.
It looks pretty good, and I like it. One thing that you may need to do is you may need to, because again we didn't have the lighting accessories that we have now, so he's a little bit hot as far as the exposure, so you may need to go into color. Okay, you can do this, probably the easiest way is through color, and just kind of tone him down just a little bit there, because again he is just a little bit overexposed. I think I made it just a little bit too much. Yes, too much. To do 0.5. Alright, and that looks a lot better to me. Just that he's just a little bit overblown. You can tell the difference here. His skin tone is just a lot more less just pure white, versus here we get a little bit more of the magenta and pink parts of his pigment. So that looks good. The other thing that I want you to include that will be a requirement is a name key, a lower third name key. So I'm going to show you guys how to do that. Again, I am on the 2017 version, not the 2018 version, so doing this is going to be a little bit different. I think this says graphics instead of title, but you should be able to figure it out. So I'm going to just call it Lawrence name. Okay, when you're doing this, make sure that you have it in whatever folder that you want it to save to. But if you're not, you always can drag and drop things into the right folder or bin. Make sure you're using bins, because when you go back, if someone ever has to go back and finish up your work, the more organized it is, the easier everyone's life is. Alright, so we're in our title tool, and again, yours are going to look a little bit different with the upgrade. But I think I'm going to use this one instead. So with a name key, I usually like to use some type of background to contain the actual text. It just looks a lot better if you can actually incorporate the Lone Star logo somehow in it. That'll also kind of, just kind of give it a little bit more just flair to it. And I'm going to change the color to blue. Okay, and then I'm going to start my text, and I'm going to actually make the text white, as white as I can make it. And we'll put his name. We'll put Doc. Let's go back to right here. Dr. Kendall Lawrence. And I'm actually going to highlight that, or underline it rather. And then I'm going to space down. And then we'll put his credentials. So he is a department chair. And I'm gonna decrease the spacing between those two to something about right there. And then I'm gonna bring it down here. And as you can see, my little shape here, my little rounded rectangle, can be just a little bit taller. Do that, and then I'm gonna bring it down here. Now, when you're doing lower thirds titles, typically because people read from left to right, you'll want to have it off to the lower left. But if it's something where, you know, it's kind of distracting or it's hard to read it, there's something in the actual video where it just doesn't work there, then yes, you can, you know, move it over to the right. But you want to definitely make sure it's in the lower, that's why I call it lower thirds. It's all based off of, you know, the rule of thirds, where the screen is kind of like in a tic-tac-toe board. And so you want to make sure the key is in those lower quadrants there at the bottom. So it looks pretty good. I'm going to add a little bit of drop shadow to it. I like doing that to kind of add some separation with the actual text. And because my computer's a little laggy, it's not showing up just yet, but it will at some point, hopefully. Okay, so we have our text, or our title, our lower thirds. So we can go ahead and close out of that, and as you can see, it's right there. So then I can just drag it onto my my timeline. Usually with this, you want it to kind of fade in, so use a dissolve and fade out. As far as duration, it all depends on the person's name, how long it is, you know, their credentials, how long it would take for a person to read it. So what I usually do is actually just, you know, play through it and see if, you know, it's
and what I mean by that is
long
that,
enough
we're kind of hidden. North Harris is.
Transition for
I wish we
it
were
to,
on like a major thoroughfare where people driving by.
for people to
I
read
guess
it.
I'm all about
So
marketing, but when they try.
probably about right there. I usually say about 7 seconds, and again, depends on how long their name is and the credentials and everything. And then you'll have it fade out, and then you have your lower third. My computer is like frozen in time right now, but that's okay. But you can see that it has both of those there. So again, that's basically in a nutshell what you need to do. Again, the pacing and timing of it is gonna vary from person to person. I do not, again, want to hear the interviewer asking questions. Use transitions, cut to B-roll, use these different things, cut to the close-up that we have in there to help control the pacing and timing of the edit. Okay? Alrighty, well, that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, make sure that you either text or email me. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So, happy editing.